Hello everyone, welcome back. SimCFI here, and today we're going to do a flight in the A2A Simulations Cherokee 180 from Conover to Agua Dulce in Southern California. This is the route, and to make it a little more interesting, we're going to curve it up here to meet up with the Gorman Vortac, and then we're going to go direct from there. That way we'll be able to use some of the skills we learned in that VOR video I had. Now for altitude wise, we got 8,000 foot mountain here, but we're going to go around it 7,000 foot over here, but we're going to be inside that valley, and then the terrain is going to be descending and be somewhat lower than over here the rest of the way. We got a 5,700 foot peak over here, but again we'll be to the right of that one, 4,000. The airport down here is at 2660. We got some terrain over here at 48. So I think 7,500 should work. This is going to be a VFR flight. And then since this is an easterly direction between 0 and 179 degrees, then we're going to fly odd altitude plus 500. So that's why I chose 7,500. Otherwise I was thinking of 9,500, but I think we'll be okay with 7,500. The other thing to now plan is the weather. So going into aviationweather.gov, I usually start with this main page. Make sure it's the interactive map. If it's not the interactive map, it won't look like this, and there'll be a button down here to click for it. And another feature I just recently found is this full screen button. Makes it a lot nicer to find stuff. Now, finding our position on this map was a little difficult at first. So I had to find some airports you were around. So here's EDW, that's Edwards, and then there's this SDB. And then I think when you zoomed in you could see another one, maybe not. But trying to find where these things were. Went to Sky Vector, here's Edwards, up here, and then we're over here. And now when I typed in SDB I didn't get anything, but it's, when you click on it, it says Sandberg, and if you look at the chart, Sandberg is right here. And here's a little circle with a dot, and it's the Sandberg ASOS. So this is an instance where they have a weather reporting site off of an airport somewhere. They have this up at Mount Shasta too, Northern California, just north of Redding. So they have a little ASOS here giving you a report where this place is. This looks like it's around 4,000 feet. Terrain goes up a little bit to south of this airport. So now that we know where this is, that's a good indication of weather along our route. So we go back to that, click on this. So this is on the 27th at 2248 Zulu. We got winds from 150 at 13 gusting 2-3, and this is at 4,000 feet. And so gusty winds like this at these speeds through the mountains it can start getting rather turbulent. This is kind of the limit that I would stop flying. It'll get pretty bumpy. 10-mile visibility, clear skies, temperature 24, dew point 6, altimeter 29 or 9 or 7, and now they also have temperature and dew point out here in Fahrenheit. And to convert from one to another, to get Celsius to Fahrenheit, you double it and add 30. So double that, 24 is going to be 48. Add 30, so that's 48, 58, 68, 78. That gets you pretty close to your Fahrenheit, and then just reverse the process to step back down if needed. Alright, so it looks like there's some gusty winds SoCal today, at least in the mountains. Now also, looking at weather, let's get winds aloft. So forecast, winds and temperatures, I'll middle mouse click on that. I'm just going to go to the graphic this time, and let's start with 9,000. And it looks like if anything it calms down a little bit higher up. Maybe there's just high gusty surface winds, because these are all showing like 5-knot barbs here at 9,000 feet. Let's drop down to 6, and again it looks like 5s again, down to 3. Some of these disappear because of terrain, so it looks like 5s, but as we can see the surface winds are increasing. And so that's probably a little bit higher. It's going to be a little bit bumpy over these mountains. That's pretty much it for the weather along our route right now. If we're planning a little bit into the future, we could look at prog charts, not surface. Well, we could look at surface to get the fronts and whatnot. So it looks like there's a low pressure center right down here near Vegas. But let's go back. Low level. And so we could look out in advance. Here's your valid times and days. See when the IFR and margin of VFR is going to start moving in, where the freezing levels are. We've discussed this in the previous video, but we don't really need to do this right now. We know the weather's pretty much clear down there. It's just going to be a little windy aloft over the mountains. Alright, so that's it for weather. Now another part about the weather though is, you know, this private strip over here and in the airport Aguadulce we're going to don't have weather reporting that you're seeing here, and they don't have any weather reporting, you know, visible as an AWAS. Now Aguadulce, if we read the airport info, it says it down below. Activate mic 5 times on CTAF frequency for airport weather. I've seen this at other airports. So just click the mic 5 times and then an automated message will play, but it's not a different frequency you tune. So it's a little bit special like that. And so we're not going to get that in the sim. And so then you just have to go to Weather Channel. Now getting our starting point, I went to the nearest larger town, Fraser Park, and we can see that it's about 75 degrees there. Winds are 8 miles an hour, dew point 43, there's your altimeter. Visibility 5 miles. So we can get that, and then I couldn't find Aguadulce in the Weather Channel, but I found it here. They got 85 degrees. There's altimeter, visibility 10. Winds are, looks like, 2 miles an hour, gusting to 5. So that's not too bad either. Okay, so now next thing we need to do is calculate some performance here. So Conover is a 3,000 foot strip. We zoom in, you can see that. It's at 5,160 feet elevation, 3,000 feet long. And we go into our performance charts. This is takeoff distance versus density altitude for the Cherokee 180. And so these conditions are set with 25 degrees flaps, 2,400 pounds, max effort, so holding the brakes, full power, letting go, and flying perfectly. Paved, level, dry runway. Well, we're on a grass field, soft field. It's not level, it's sloped, and it is dry runway. So the good part about us is we're going to be taking off downhill. We're going to start up here, taxi uphill this way. We're going to take off going downhill, and we got not too many obstacles either. We have room to turn after departure, but I don't think these trees will be a problem. So we need to calculate our density altitude to use this chart. Now you can do so on the E6B, and if you don't have the E6B, if you do have, you can just look on YouTube real quick to figure out how to use it. There's some good videos on how to do E6B on YouTube. Otherwise, I just Google density altitude calculator for those that don't have an E6B, and you just punch in your info here. Elevation, air temperature, altimeter, dew point, click calculate. We got 7,936. So that's about 8,000 feet. So we look at 8,000 feet density altitude. Ground run, you just go from 8,000 to the ground run line, then go straight down from there. And the ground run is going to be just over 1,000 feet, about 1,200 maybe, or 1,100 feet. And even with an obstacle, take the 8,000 to the obstacle line, total distance over 50-foot obstacle, straight down, that's about 2,400 feet, and the runway is 3,000 feet. So we're going to be okay in takeoff, and we'll be able to climb. And then landing, we can find landing. It's on a sideways one here. Landing distance. So let's keep it like this. Density altitude. Well, at any density altitude, our longest landing distance over a 50-foot barrier is going to be like 1,300 feet. and so we'll be okay with that too. Because the Aguadouce is at like 4,600 feet at 2,660 feet elevation. We'll be okay with that. Winds are out of the south, they said, on the Weather Channel or this website. And so we'll land on this runway, which is going to be runway 22. Yeah, runway 22. And then we can read more info on it here, so we get the length. It's 4,600 feet by 50 feet. You want to make sure you know your lengths and widths of the runways. Make sure you can perform takeoff and land out of these airports. Now I'm not going to calculate takeoff out of this one. We're not doing that. But just make sure you get all this info before you fly. That should be just about it for most of the pre-flight planning. So now we're going to get into the sim. Let's see, let me double check everything here. So we looked at our weather, we looked at the current observations for our departure and our arrival airports. We looked at, well, I showed you some prog charts. We looked at winds aloft. We checked other METARs in the area. Alright, we calculated density altitude for takeoff and landing at our airports, and then we know the weather's going to be clear, and we've got almost full fuel, and so that's going to be good enough for this route. If we click on flight plan, I put in 110 knots, and it says if we're flying at altitude along this whole route, it's going to take us about 24 minutes. So we're going to be definitely okay with fuel. And then there's a few alternates along the route we can go to if anything happens. So we got plenty of choices to choose from. The other main concern, though, along with this route is you just want to make sure you're clear of everything else airspace-wise and obstacles and other stuff. So as we go along the route, we're clear up here. There's a military training route here, VR 1257, and so when it's 4 numbers, it means it has no segment above, or it means you got no segment above 1,500 feet. So this is limited to a low altitude. They're going to be at 1,500 feet AGL or below the whole route. Going pretty quick. Alright, so we got to make sure we watch out for those guys on these MTRs, and as you can see here, there's a whole cluster of them. Now coming through a route down here, there's this other large one, and it says special military activity, contact Hawthorne radio on these frequencies for activity status. So real world, we'd give them a call and see what's going on with this MTR that seems to be extra special going through. It probably has a lot of activity. And this one's IR 3 digits, so they can be at any altitude on instrument flight rules. So we'll just call about that. Otherwise, we have this Red Rock Canyon Condor Sanctuary. Can't talk. Now, these condors, they have a notice here. Talks about the birds nesting. Pilots are requested to maintain 3,000 feet terrain clearance when flying over or near the sanctuaries. And so it's not a hard rule. Where'd that other one go? Here. Alright, so this terrain is 5,000 and it descends down, so we'll be around 3,000 feet or higher over this one, and we're not going directly over it. So we wouldn't worry too much about that. Along our route, we got some Tiny Lakes Airport, we got Pyramid Lake off to the right, Castaic Lake over here on the right as well, as we're coming in, and we're going to track outbound on the Gorman VOR coming out this way as well. Alright, so that's pretty much it for route planning. We've done our performance. So now we'll get into the sim. I'm going to get rid of this pointer. Okay, so now we're going to run through a pre-flight. So let's go ahead and get inside the airplane. Alright, cabin. Release the belts. Master switch on. Okay, fuel quantity gauges check. They're full on the left, below full on the right, so we'll take off on that left tank there, flying the left tank. Master switch off, ignition is off, flaps extend. Alright, next, Wiggle the flaps, make sure they're good. All the parts are intact. Same here. You also make sure real world that this aircraft skin here, basically, metal portion with these grooves here for the control surface are not cracked in any way. This is how it maintains structural stability for that control. Move the tie down, move the wheel chocks, make sure we got the safety pin, inflation, tread, and on the other side you look at the brakes, the brake pads, and any leaks along the hydraulic line. Drain the fuel, we got light blue for 100 low lead, there's no water or contaminants at the bottom. Check the fuel level, so this is right wing, it's right at the tab. Right at the tab means it's 18 gallons. Check the oil, we're just shy of 6. So we'll go ahead and add a quart. So we'll go to Shift 4. Just click the +1 and that'll add us a quart. Check this again, so now we're like 7, 6.8, whatever. So that's good for oil now, it's a good color. Okay, checking the nose, tire, inflation, tread, checking the oleo strut for a proper distance, making sure the prop doesn't have any nicks in it. And now we're checking the intake to make sure it's clear. Check the fuel on this side, or this port's right down here, bottom right here. We got light blue, 100 low lead, no water contaminants. Check the fuel, this one's full. Check this fuel quality, good. Same thing on this side for the wheel. Move the tie down. This is checking the stall horn tab. Make sure we remove the pitot cover. Let's go into the cockpit real quick, turn on the master and the pitot heat. That's pitot heat. And we can check to make sure it's working. Might take a little bit. There we go. Pitot heat is working. Turn that off. Turn the master off. And then we just make sure the ports are good. This is your pitot tube inlet. This is the pitot tube drain hole. And on the back side is a little tiny hole for the static port. Okay, now we're checking ailerons on this side. Hinges and actuator armor is intact. Make sure flaps have some security to them. Parts are intact. Move the tie down. Check all the hinges for the tab. And then for the stabilator, making sure the parts are intact. Make sure the control moves freely. And wiggling the tab itself. Make sure the baggage door is locked. And now we're ready to go. So now we're opening up our checklist. We got weight and balance, close the door, control wheel lock remove, free controls, free and correct. Okay, they are free and correct. Ignition avionics are off. Master switch on. Check fuel quantity, we got more in the left tank than the right, so we'll put the fuel to the left tank. Flaps extend and retract. So they're already extended, so we retracted. There's a first notch, second notch, third notch, back up. Elevator trim set for takeoff. Beacon on. Wheel brakes on, we got the parking brake. Carb heat is off. Fuel selectors on the fullest tank. Master switch is on. Electric fuel pump test. Good pressure. Primer, 1 to 3 strokes. We'll do 2. It's a rather warm day. Mixture rich, throttle cracked, area clear, visually clear prop. Ignition to both and starter engage. Come on, a little more throttle, there we go. Now with these carbureted engines, you want to make sure that you're not moving the throttle without the engine cranking. That's just going to pump fuel into, it's going to let it drip into the air box, and that'll create an induction fire hazard. So 1000. Temperature, pressure's in the green. We got suction, the ammeter's good, fuel pressure's good, fuel quantity. Let's lean the mixture a little bit farther than normal with our higher altitude here. We'll let the throttle sit around there. That's good for warming up the engine. It's rather warm today, so the oil is not too terribly cold right now. Okay, we've done all these items. We don't need nav lights. Altimeter is set. Check our field elevation, 5,160. 5,100. 246 right there. Every tick mark is 60 feet. Okay, that's altimeter. Heading. We're showing 160. Right about there. And it looks like we'll set the heading bug to our, we normally put it on a runway. We'll just put it onto our on course heading, which is going to be 038. Right about there. Heading, radio master on, radio's on. Alright, so while we're waiting for the oil to warm up, let's get our radio set. So there's no frequency getting out of here. We'll set 22.8 for CTAF when we get down there. We're not going to be talking to ATC or anything, so 22.8 is the only comm frequency we're going to need. Okay, now let's set up our VORs. We said we're going to go to the Gorman VOR. That's on 116.1 up here. There's 116.1. And we'll go ahead and set to ident. So I'll pull to ident and nav 1. I'm not going to hear it now, as we can see by these flags for no signal. But when it does come in, we'll start hearing it and we'll know. Alright, so that'll be the only VOR we use, at least initially. So that's the radios and avionics set. We're not using ADF or anything. This timer is useful to tell us how long we've really been sitting here for. That's a nice tool sometimes. Alright, so let's go ahead and get taxiing to the runway. We're going to taxi uphill. Make sure we clear left and right for traffic. Now, in the flight simulator, you got to use almost full throttle getting up these hills. So moving. Make sure we hold the elevator back. Moving at a pretty good speed now. A little fast taxi. Probably not the best for the wheels. Want to slow down a little bit here. For all these bumps. Holding the yoke back to get the pressure off the nose wheel. Add some more power again. You gotta get up this hill. You don't want to get stuck in the sim. Let's pull off to the side. Bumpy getting off road here. Add some power, make a turn. Now we get on the brakes. Alright, so now we're going to do the run up. Let's set the parking brake. Ground check, throttle 2000. Check the mags. Well, first we're going to get a good mixture set. So let's put it on rich. 2000 RPM. So now we're going to lean. See, it peaks, or it rises. So right around here was a good setting. So now we get it down to 2000 again. This is why we lean for takeoff. Okay, temperatures in the green. Oil pressures in the green. Got fuel quantity, suction, Let's do our mag check. Right mag, 100 RPM drop, back to both. It returns to 2000. Left mag, 100 RPM drop, back to both. Returns to 2000. Carb heat, there's an RPM drop. Carb heat off, we get back to 2000 RPM. Alright, so that's the run up complete. Okay, so now we check our engine, oh, we already did that. Let's check our flight instruments though. So we got 0 once, blue up, brown down, altimeter set, 0 twice, heading indicator set, we got no flag on the turn coordinator to indicate that it's working, it's receiving its electrical power. Alright, so now for takeoff, seat belts, doors and windows. There's the latches. Flight controls free and correct. I think we did this. Can never hurt to do it again. This caused too many accidents, having controls locked in one fashion or another. Alrighty, elevator trim, sets, mixture, not necessarily rich, we're at the proper setting. Take note of that when you're doing mountain flying. Carb heat or just anything high elevation. Carb heat is off. Fuel selector, fullest tank. Electric fuel pump on. We'll get our lights on, so strobe light, landing light. Landing light's not required for Part 91 flying, but it's pretty powerful. You can see it pretty well in the daytime if you're looking at it. So it's good to turn on. Okay, engine gauge is normal. Looks good to me. Wing flaps as required. Now remember, we got to set 25 degrees flaps. That's 2 notches of flaps in this airplane for our short field takeoff that we're going to do. Alright, so now we do lights, camera, action, lights, camera's always on at this point. And action, mixture set, flaps are set, fuel is set, trim is set. Okay, let's taxi into the runway here. Don't see anyone coming. Yoke back. Add all the power. No. Don't get stuck. Typical flight sim. Alright, quick solution. Shift P. That's a pushback command. I'm going to leave this in the video so you guys know how to do kind of a quick fix if this happens. So now let's add some more power while we're on this downhill portion. Up and over. There we go. Now we're going to turn this around and get on the brakes. I want to try to use up as much runway as we can here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set full power, make sure everything's in the green, and then release the brakes. So full power, 2300, that's good. Temperature, pressure's in the green, release the brakes. Now let's get going. Keep the nose. Well, this is also soft field, so we can get the yoke back a little bit. But short field, you usually stay on the runway as long as you can. But let's get off. Ground effect for a little bit. 76 knots VX. Let's pitch up for that. Not too much right rudder. Okay, we're already clear of the obstacles, so let's pitch down a little bit. Let the airspeed build for a second. Take away that first notch of flaps. Airspeed and rate of climb is good. Flaps up. You can visibly see they're up. We're also getting our VOR ready, so let's turn that off. We've tuned and identified it. So now let's turn to our on-course heading of 038. Looking left and right for traffic and terrain. We want to fly into a mountain. So while we're down here next to these mountains, it's good to note that you want to note the direction of the wind. And as far as we know, it's probably out of the south. You want to know the direction of the wind because think of wind flowing over the terrain just like water is going to flow over the terrain. And so if wind is coming over this terrain at us, it's going to tumble down. It's going to tumble and go down. And so if you're flying too close, you get caught in the tumbleness and it's pushing you down. So that's bad for obvious reasons. So we've got pretty good climb speed. Let's pitch back a bit more to VY. Or just whatever comfortable climb speed we got going on. 85 is good. Alright. So 038 is putting us into this terrain a bit. We still have another 1,000 feet to go, but let's go ahead and turn left. We're still restricted by this mountain here. Let's pitch back. Enter 85, we'll climb better. Alright, we're a safe altitude above the field. Let's turn the fuel pump off, landing light off. Check our fuel pressure. Pressure's holding. Leave the mixture where it is just for now. We're going to have to slowly reduce that. We got another 500 feet to go. There we go. See the terrain dips down there, so we got a passage to go through. Kind of in a slight bit of a bowl, terrain-wise. You know, we got mountains all over this airport. We're climbing pretty good. We're at 95 miles an hour. That's okay. We don't need to climb super fast now. Let the nose come down a little bit for cooling. Instruments are in the green. Okay, we're coming up on 7,500. Push the nose forward to level. Being in the mountains, we don't really have the perfect horizon anymore. So you gotta cross-check with your instruments a little more often. Keep the power in for a second. Descending too much. Alright, so let's reduce the 2,500 for now. We're going to turn back on course through this valley here. So last we saw winds are out of the south. And so that means we're going to, if the winds are out of the south, going through this valley, we're going to want to fly on the left side of it, because here's south, which is on the right. The wind is going to come down and then up. We want to be on this upwind side. Let's get it back to 7,500, 7,500. Alright, so now we should be able to fly direct to the VOR, I think. Let's see what that gives us. So we're going to turn this OBS, the Omni Bearing Selector, until we get 2 flag, which we just got, and we want to center the needle, and that'll give us a direct course to the station. That is going to be 085. So we'll turn to a heading of 085, up at the heading bug there. That'll take us direct to the station. Turbulence here. Making sure to stay more on this left side of the valley than the right. Which is working out for us. Remember, don't let this VOR. See, it's trending a little bit to the right, but I don't want to go too much further right now for the mountain wind to sake the turbulence. Got a small body of water in front of us and a road. That road, I'm assuming, might be I-5. This is what's known as the Grapevine. As you're driving from the valley or to SoCal. Bit of a high altitude road you drive through. try to recenter up on this VOR now. Let's just get a new bearing to it. It's more to the right. It's now about almost 100, which is right where we're on. Let's get our altitude back. All this turbulence keeps bumping us around. Alright, so we're going to have to find a better mixture and a better power setting. A little busy there getting out of the terrain and whatnot. So let's go ahead and pause real quick. Look at the performance charts. Power settings, we're at 7,500, so we'll split the difference between here. Let's do 65% power, so 2510. If we did 60% power, it's below 20, so 2,500 looks good to be in the middle of 60 to 65% power between 7,000 and 8,000 feet, and so we can put the mixture wherever we want. So 2,500, that's good. Let's just lean a bit more. Okay, we got roughness, let's put the mixture back in. There we go. Now we're a little bit more leaned out than what we were, saving a little more gas. And 60 to 65% power is a nice cruise power setting for engine longevity. And you get that, choose whatever mixture setting you like. I really like that, makes it easy. But if you watched my videos on leaning, they're rather lengthy, talking about the technicalities of it, which are all correct, but also leaning with these EGTs, a single probe EGT, you know, it's all kind of difficult because that's only off of one cylinder. Alright, so I think we've, this VOR needle's off to the side again. So we're probably almost on top of it. Coming over I-5, let's check our chart real quick, that'll tell us somewhere definite, but we're probably right on top of it at this point. VOR, yeah, it's right after the freeway, there's that lake. So we got lake on the left, freeway, we're just past it. Now if you look at the VOR gauge, we got a from flag. So now we need to get on course, heading of 108, so we're going to fly the 108 radio. That's 100. There's 105, there's 108 roughly. Now we're going to turn to that heading. Put the heading bug on 108. We're going to stay right a bit to intercept this course. Alright, getting bumped around. Remember from that AWAS in the mountains, there's like 15 gusting 23. This is a little bit of what that's like. It'll be a little bit more bumpy than this in real life, but Active Sky Next does a pretty good job of doing turbulence like this in the mountains. It's pretty bumpy. I'm trying to maintain altitude. Alright, let's fly right more to get this course. Don't want to get lost in the mountains. So we got I-5 going down to the right. There's another body of water there. There's a body of water here. Looks like we're going to be splitting the difference between them. We'll just let our altitude. Let's get our altitude back down. It can be easy to ignore that, especially when you think you're out in the middle of nowhere like this. But at the same time, you want to make sure you're on altitude, so ATC can track it. Even though we're not talking to them, they can see us on radar. They can vector other traffic around us if necessary. We want to be a little more predictable. Alright, so that course is coming in now. Check the charts real quick. Put a little nose down trim. Let's see. Oh, okay, so this body of water, yep, there's an airport at the end of it. Okay. That one goes down. So maybe that's Pyramid Lake? Yeah, I think that's Pyramid Lake over there on the right. Let's get our altitude. Doing pretty good on the VOR. See another body of water up ahead. there below the compass. I think that's the one at the big dam. The end of the grapevine. It's down here, Castaic Lake. Now we can tune this one, Lake Hughes Vortex, and we'll be able to see when we pass by it. And it's going to be on one of these ridges on the left. So let's put that in nav 2 as we wait for this course to line up a bit more. Altitude is going everywhere. So we got 108.4. 8. Too far. There, 108.4. Switch that over. And we're going to listen to it. Nav 2. Go to IDA. Alright. Turn that off. Let's see. So we got a 2 flag. We'd have to fly heading of 99, 100 to fly directly to it. And that's over here. That's basically off our left. Which if we look on our course, I'm pitching down for the altitude, it's just off our left. So we'll see as it passes by. So we're staying on course pretty well. Let's get a little bit more right. So make that VOR happy on the top, number 1 VOR. We're doing good with our engine instruments. Stuff is in the green. Fuel is still more fuel in that left tank. Big old gust right there. It is pretty turbulent. Maneuvering speed at max gross weight is 129 miles per hour. And we're under gross weight, and maneuvering speed goes down as your weight goes down. We're doing about 120 between 125, fluctuating to 130 indicated, so we'll be okay here. We're roughly around maneuvering speed. Temperature outside. Put that visor down. We got, what, 22 degrees Celsius, about 70 degrees. Okay. Now let's check what radio we're on. So we can, we'll check what radios we're on. So let's get a from flag on this second VOR. So there's a from flag. And we are on the 265 roughly radio. Pitch down again for altitude. 265, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 roughly. So we're like here, roughly. So we haven't passed it yet. That's how you can check if you're passing it. Just know what radio you're on. Remember, radios are coming from the station. Really getting ballooned up today, altitude-wise. This is a pretty good mountain flight. We had a user request for mountain flying, and I think this is actually a pretty good example. At the beginning, we had terrain we had to go around, a bit of a bowl effect, flying through a valley. Talked about the winds there. Now, if you have to cross a ridge line, like if we're going this way, probably around this altitude, you want to cross it at like a 45-degree angle. And that's so if you're getting way too much turbulence, if it's going to start outperforming your airplane, you can make a turn back easier from a 45-degree intercept versus flying straight across it. You got more time to turn around with the 45-degree intercept. And you usually want to cross peaks and ridges at least 2,000 feet above them. The higher you can get, the better, the less turbulence you have. Alright, so the number 1 VOR is finally drifting left a bit, so we'll basically put ourselves on this heading bug. Now, when you're flying, usually all the time, it's like a mentality you need to get. When you think about where you're going to be landing the airplane if the engine quits, we've been doing this whole thing without headsets off. Alright, so when you think about where you're going to land if the engine quits, and as you can see, flying through mountainous terrain, you don't have very many options. Some things I think about is I'll look for roads down there, maybe line myself up on a road or near a road, like there's one back there. And then there's roads on this ridge and this ridge, so maybe go down to this valley. I'm going to land at a valley, at the bottom of it, there might be a river or something. Otherwise, you might be able to land on top of a ridge line if that looks better. But just trying to stay roughly near roads and then know what direction the road is, maybe from your landing site, so maybe you can walk or cripple your way over there. Might get a passing car, that might be your best bet. Otherwise, you know, and only move if that's going to be pretty close. Otherwise, you want to stay, you know, basic survival tips to stay at the aircraft. Use all the aircraft for survival. Make sure you get survival stuff in the back, too. You always want to be prepared for the terrain you're going to be flying over. Alright, now let's see what radio we're on. It's going to be a smaller one. Now we're on the 150, so we've just about passed it. Because 15 is here, so we're roughly around this place. So off our right wing should be that lake. Yep, there it is. So that's good. Looks like there's a smaller lake over there. We're ballooning again on altitude. Let's get that back down. Small lake, yeah, there it is. Okay. Alright, so that's also getting close to the airport. We need to start getting down. 2, 3, 4. Probably close to 10 miles out. So let's just start at 500 feet per minute descent. We'll reduce the power a bit so we can stay near maneuvering speed for all this turbulence we got. 2200 RPM, let's set that for a bit. Now last we saw the winds, they were out of the south according to that Weather Underground site. And so they got a runway 22, that's going to give us a slight left to right crosswind, but that's given us a headwind, whereas the other runway 04 is going to give us a tailwind crosswind. So runway 22 it is, and it's going to be right pattern, so we're going to come in, 22, that works out perfectly. We're going to be on the 45 for the right downwind for 22. And pattern altitude is going to be 1,000 over there, so 3,600, 3,700. Our VOR is still in line, so we're en route. We can add a little bit of power here. And as we descend, I'm going to start bringing that mixture in a little bit at a time. Let's see, fuel is doing good still. It's almost balanced out. Temperatures in the green section's good. Let's see. Not too many landmarks around. But no, we go too far if we cross this major freeway coming through here. Now you can kind of see the urban development off to the right. That's going to be off to the right here, Santa Clarita. That body of water we said was en route. Each tick mark on this line of longitude is 1 nautical mile. So that's 4. Probably like 5 miles out, 5 to 6 miles out at this point. Gotta descend a bit more. Alright, so if we're under 120 knots, so we're doing like 1.5 miles. 120 knots is gonna be 2 miles a minute. We've got knots on the inside here. So if we're doing 110, that's can be between 1.5 to 2 miles a minute. And if we're descending 500 feet per minute, we need to get down to 37. We're at 63. So we got 6, 5, 4, 3. So just under 3,000 feet to descend, 500 feet per minute. Under 2 miles a minute. We got 5 miles. So that's going to be about 4 minutes. 500 feet per minute is 2 minutes for every 1,000 feet, so that's 246. So yeah, we'll let this vertical speed stay a little bit higher like this. That's the kind of math you do in your head. Stumbling a bit, you get better at it the more you do it, but just want to calculate how far you have to go, how long it's going to take you at your airspeed. So if you're descending at 120 knots, which I usually do in the 172, maybe not in a mountainous area, that's easy because it's 2 miles a minute. And then 500 feet per minute is going to be 2 minutes for every 1,000 feet, and then you can adjust it from there. Sometimes it's nice to set up a 200 foot per minute descent, calculate how long that'll take you to descend down. So just make sure you're doing it from your cruise altitude to pattern altitude, not the airport elevation. Alright. Okay, we passed that lake. Got some clouds coming up here. That's not always good in a mountainous area. That's going to start masking terrain. You don't want to get into the clouds. Coming up on 5,000. Alright, let's do another check. It looks like off the radio, off the Lake Hughes VOR, it's going to be about the 120 radio is where the airport should be. So let's put 120. And we're just about centered on it. So that means the airport has got to be around here somewhere. Cloud. And remember to bank the wings here. Look around. There's a larger road below us. I think that might even be that freeway. Now we got urban development here. It's not really listed on the chart too well. There we go. That looks like the airport. It's an airport at least. Looks like the terrain rises. Yeah, it's all hard to tell. Actually, won't be too useful, but this white bar means we're inside the TAC. Where'd it go? Los Angeles TAC. You can kind of see terrain rises. Yeah, there we go. Rising terrain, freeway on the other side. So freeway is over there somewhere. Alright, so right pattern. 3,600 is the pattern altitude. Let's do GUMS. Gas is on fullest tank. Undercarriage we don't have. Mixture 4,000. Let's do full rich and then just back a bit. So gas undercarriage mixture prop. We don't have seatbelt switches. Seatbelts, we'll have them on. And switches. Pump on, landing light on. Okay, we're at 22.8. We should have announced back there, but now we're Aguadouce traffic. Cherokee 73 Sierra, right downwind for 22 Aguadouce. There's the runway. Okay, we're beam our touchdown point. Reduce the power, about 1,700. First notch of flaps. Hold altitude. Now we'll descend around 90 miles an hour. Nose up trim here. There's the runway. Alright. Turn right. Next notch of flaps. Aguadouce traffic, Cherokee 73 Sierra. Right base, 22 Aguadouce. Alright, now we're on base. Around 80 miles an hour is what we're going to shoot for. Look left and right for traffic. Aguadouce traffic, Cherokee 73 Sierra. Turning final, 22 Aguadouce. This is where you do another check for your gear. So now we're showing up a little bit high. Let's do full flaps. Remember, 2700 was the elevation. Okay, 80 miles an hour. We're full flaps. I've reduced the power a bit. Nose up trim. We are right of center line. Remember, there might be that southern wind giving us a left to right crosswind. Add some power here. Now this runway, this part in front is, I forget the name off the top of my head, but the arrows mean you can taxi and take off on it, but you can't land. You have to land after the threshold here. Threshold is this big white bar. So now we can land. Got power to idle. Hold it off. Alright, down in the nose wheel. Now just hold the yoke back. That's rolling pretty good. Just let it roll to the next taxiway. Didn't really feel too much of a crosswind. Let's see what the sim says. 196 at 8. So that's basically 200. So 8 knots, 20 degrees off to the left. So it was a little bit. Not very noticeable. Only 20 degrees off at 8 knots. Alrighty, let's turn off here. Now it's Cherokee. We don't have to use brakes to turn like in a 172. Nice direct taxi. Let's get off past the hold short line here. Oh, sudden acceleration. Brakes. Okay, the whole tail is clear. Now, kind of blocking the taxi, but I don't see anyone, so let's real quick. 1000 RPM, we're just over. Lean the mixture. There we go, a little bit of roughness, push it back in. Strobe light off, fuel pump off, landing light off. Take the headset out. And flaps retract. And trim reset. And we could say Aguadouce traffic, Cherokee 73 Sierra, clear of 22, taxiing to transient Aguadouce. So let's add some power, a little bit of mixture in to let the engine run smooth. And we'll just park here. That'll make it easy. There's a guy walking a dog. Now ORBX has an add-on airport for this, so that'll be worth checking out. I usually don't buy them. I just like the extra performance without having the add-on airports, and then just the money. Just can't afford to have all these add-on airports, but they sure do look nice. I like the regions though. The regions, you know, I don't know what this airport would look like default. You wouldn't have this dude walking around with a dog, these cars, these extra hangars and static aircraft. So the regions add a lot to the airports as well. Alright, parking brake. Now for engine shutdown, the three main things to remember, at least about these types of airplanes. Avionics off, ground the magnetos, the engine decides to cut when you turn it off, which means it's working, and then just pull the mixture. From there, I just do a left to right flow, making sure everything is off. Easy wait till the prop stops. Okay, master off, beacon off, key off, make sure it's off. That's one of the most important things. And everything's good. We just leave that transponder on ALT now. Get the parking brake set. Let's go ahead and set the control lock. You just pull it back and to the right, click on the seat belt, pop the door open. That's it for the inside. Just run through the checklist real quick if you want. Descent landing, we did that. Okay, doesn't even have it. Alright. Now we'll get out of the airplane. Does this one have any towing feature? No. Well, we're close enough to the line. So let's go ahead and empty the plane, close the door, put the pitot cover on, tie downs, wheel chocks, and there you have it. The airplane's all shut down, secured, ready for the next flight. We're here in Aguadouce. Looks like we made it before some weather came in or developed. Pretty bumpy flight. Make sure to check the weather. You can see with those winds. Let's see if it changed much. Let's go here. This is the one, KSDB. Refresh. Looks like it calmed down a little bit. It was gusting up to 23. Now it's only gusting to 18. 14 gusting 18. But yeah, it's pretty bumpy over the mountains. Alright, so if you have any questions, just leave them down below. Let me know if you liked this style of video. Decided to do a flight where I haven't done the flight before. Figured we'd figure it out together. Showed you the pre-flight planning, some of the performance calculations you want to check with the airplane. Make sure you can take off and land in the available distance. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you in the next video.